Hi, I'm Michael Janda, author of the book Burn Your Portfolio. And I'm Michael Janda. I also wrote Burn Your Portfolio. Today we're going to be talking about how to ask a client for their budget. Hi, my name's Michael Janda. In this video, we're going to talk about how to extract the client's budget. How do you ask the client for their budget number? I founded the agency Riser in 2002. We did work for Google and Disney and ABC, NBC, Fox, Warner Brothers, and everybody in between. And I have literally sat in thousands of client meetings. We talk about the project scope. I ask a lot of questions, I get all the details, and then I have experience asking the budget. And I know what that's like when you're sitting there at the table and you're thinking to yourself as the client's discussing what they want to build, you're thinking to yourself, wow, this is going to cost X amount of dollars. And then you ask the question, hey, how much budget do you have set aside for this project? And the client comes back and their number is way too small. I've also been on the other side. You're sitting with the client and you're thinking, okay, I think we'd probably bid this project around X amount of dollars. And they come back and they say, hey, our budget is whatever, and it's a lot larger than what you were thinking it was going to be. Those are the exciting ones. It is so critical at the start of the project, in that first discovery meeting, that you ask the client what their budget is. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 techniques that you can use to ask the client their budget and get the answer. I'm also going to walk you through step by step the conversation you can have with the client so that you can get the budget number from even the most tight-lipped client out there. Okay, let's start with technique number 1. It's not rocket science. Ask the client their budget. Way too many designers are afraid to do this. And when you don't know the budget, you're just bidding blind. You're just throwing a number out there hoping that it fits within what the client wants to spend. You have to have the confidence to ask the budget. Otherwise, you're going to spend time working on a proposal, crafting the scope, getting your numbers in order, sending it or presenting it to the client, only to find out that it is a waste of time because you're way over budget. They don't have enough budget. You have to know the budget. The other reason you have to know the budget is because you don't want to leave money on the table. If the client has a budget of $5,000 to do something, you want to bid it near their budget, even if the cost to you to produce that work is $1,500. You have to know the client's budget for either of those 2 reasons. So don't be afraid to ask. Now, the process in asking for the client's budget goes like this. You sit in the discovery meeting and you ask a ton of questions about the project. You want to know the scope. You want to know about their business. You want to dig into what their goals are, what they're hoping to accomplish with this project. Ask questions, questions, questions. And then at the end of that conversation, you say, okay, great. Thank you for all this information about the project. I think we have everything we need. One final question. Is there a budget range that you're trying to work within for this project? Now, the client is going to respond one of 2 different ways. The first way they might respond is by saying, well, we're not really sure what our budget is. We're getting bids and we're just going to see where the agencies come back, and then we're going to attach the budget based on where the bids come in. Now, my belief is that everybody has a number when they come to the table. They may not be a budget number, but they have a number that they're hoping to spend. So you can dig in. Don't just blow past the question if the client doesn't give it up and they say that they just want to get the bids. Don't blow past the question. You're going to work harder to get that number from them using the other techniques that I'll show you in a minute. So that's the first way that they might respond. The second way that they might respond is to give you a range. They'll probably say something like, well, we're hoping to be under $3,000, or yeah, we have a budget, it's about $2,500 to $3,000. They'll give you a range and they'll kind of throw that number out on the table just to see how you respond. Now, something critical here is that no matter what they say, big or small, you have a poker face. You don't want to give them an idea of whether you think their number is big or whether you think their number is too small. So just write it down on your piece of paper and say, okay, we're going to go back to our office. We're going to crunch our numbers and see where this project comes in on our side. But knowing your budget number is going to be super helpful to us so that we can craft a proposal that fits within what you're hoping to spend. Now, after you have this budget number, you may go back to your office and decide that the project is way too big for the budget that they have to spend. You can either reduce the scope to fit within their budget or tell the client that you're going to pass on the opportunity, that the budget's too small and you can't produce the work within what they're hoping to spend. I've done both. One thing that's super important is you never want to take on a project that is going to be unprofitable. So if the client's budget's too small, don't take on the project. Okay, let's move on to technique number 2. This technique is to ask about past projects. The client didn't want to give up their budget when you asked for it directly, so you just follow up by saying, okay, I understand you don't want to have an allocated budget quite yet because you're waiting for the bids to come in. That makes sense. What have you spent on projects like this in the past? That question can open up a door of conversation to them sharing some similar projects or related projects that they've spent money on in the past, which can give you some insight into what they might want to spend on this project. Now, if the client says, oh, well, we haven't really done any projects like this in the past, we're really just trying to get these bids together so that we can determine what our budget should be, then you know that they're being tight-lipped and they're really not wanting to give you any numbers, and you're going to move on to technique number 3. I use this one all the time. Client doesn't want to give you their budget number, and you float a price range. And it goes like this. Now, you just asked them using technique number 2 about past projects that they might have spent money on, and they didn't give you any number, so you're going to tell them about past projects that you've done. You're going to say something like, well, the last 3 projects that we've done that are similar in scope to what you're doing here ranged in price between $3,000 and $4,000. Is that a price range that you'd be comfortable with? And here you want to pause for a minute and you want to gauge their reaction. If you see them squirm a little bit, or if they kind of look down, or if they react in kind of a negative way, then you know that your budget, your proposed budget, exceeds what they're comfortable spending. But if they're comfortable with the numbers you just threw across the table, they're going to respond with something like, yeah, that seems right in line with what we were expecting. And then you're going to know that you have their range that you're going to be comfortable with and they're going to be comfortable with, and then you can move on past there. If they still don't give it up, you're going to move on to technique number 4. This technique is to use a comparison of other products. I like to use cars and hotels. They seem to work the best, and let me show you how this is done. The client has been reluctant to give you their budget, so in this strategy, you're really just looking to determine whether the client is looking for something high-end or low-end. And it goes something like this. I understand you aren't sure exactly what you want to spend, but just so that we can make sure that we're bidding in the ballpark of what you're looking for, let's compare your project to cars. Stay with me here for a second. We'll use this just as a metaphor. Now, an Aston Martin Vantage, which is a car I love, will get you from point A to point B, but so will a Chevy Malibu. They're both going to get you there. Now, the Aston Martin has all kinds of bells and whistles and features, and it's going to be a different experience than the Chevy Malibu, which is a lower end car, obviously, but it's still going to be a nice car, and it's still going to get you from A to B. So if you were going to compare your project to an Aston Martin or a Chevy Malibu or any other car, are you looking to put in some high-end features right out of the gate, or are you looking for more of an entry-level car that's going to get you on the road, and then you can spend money in the future to add bells and whistles to it in a phase 2 or phase 3. Now, this is a really important technique right here. Nobody wants to tell you that their budget is low end. They don't want to say, oh yeah, well, sorry, we don't want the Lamborghini, we just want a Ford Focus. Nobody wants to tell you that. They all want to act like they have gobs of money. So if you give them the ability to add features later, it helps them feel better about saying that they have a low-end budget now. So you say something like, are you looking just to get something started here, and then we could do a phase 2 or phase 3 to add all kinds of bells and whistles to this project. That helps the client feel more comfortable saying, yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to just do something just to get started, and then we want to add features later. They feel better about it. Now, sometimes a client's going to come to you and say, no way, we want a high-end product right out of the gate. We're trying to launch this in a big way, and we want to come out with a big product right out of the gate. So this technique can help you gauge whether they have a high-end budget or a low-end budget, which will help you understand where you should be scoping and pricing the project. Now, if they still don't want to give it up, we're going to move on to technique number 5. Now, the client hasn't wanted to share their budget with you up until now. They've been very reluctant to give you any kind of idea of what they really want to spend on this project. This is a risky situation. You don't want to go and spend all kinds of time crafting a proposal just to find out that the client's budget is too small for you to be able to produce the work that they want. So in this situation, if you get to here and the client has been reluctant all along the way, you're going to tell them that you're going to send them a rough estimate before you go and craft a whole full-blown proposal. So you're going to say to them, okay, great. Thank you for all the information on this project. And we've talked a little bit about numbers. Before we go and craft a whole big proposal, because it takes a lot of time for us to do that, we're going to talk it over with our team and get some rough numbers together, and then we'll send you just a rough estimate. It's just a one-page document that has a description of the project as we understand it from this meeting, and then a budget range that we expect it to hit. And if you're okay with the number that we put into the rough estimate, we'll go in and craft a full proposal for you based on that. Does that sound okay with you? And at this point, they're going to say, yeah, that sounds great. We just want some rough numbers. That's all we want. The people who are reluctant with their budget number usually are open to whatever you're wanting to give them. They're not very seasoned most of the time in working with agencies or freelancers, and they're just going to want like a rough number. So you're going to send them that in this rough estimate. So this method is going to help you save hours of time crafting a full-blown proposal for a client who may not have enough budget to work with you. Okay, those are the 5 techniques. Now I'm going to walk you through a full conversation with a client who is reluctant to give up the number, and we're going to use all 5 techniques in one smooth flowing conversation. And for this, I'm going to bring in my friend, the uber good looking Michael Janda. Hey, don't take this the wrong way, but you're pretty good looking yourself. Gosh, thanks a lot. It means a lot coming from you. Now here's the scene. We're just wrapping up the discovery meeting. I've asked you a ton of questions about the project. You've given me all the scope information, and now I'm going to ask you about the budget. And I want you to be one of those clients that doesn't want to give up that budget number. Okay, that sounds great. I'll be the client, and I know what it's like to have a client who doesn't want to give up their budget, so I get it. All right, great. Thank you for all this great information. This has been a fun meeting. We really love your project, and we really hope that we can work on it with you. We know we're a good fit to help you with this project. Now, just one final question. Is there a budget number that you're trying to work within on this project? Well, we're not exactly sure what we want to spend quite yet. So we're just getting bids from a bunch of different agencies and we're gonna determine our budget from there. I see. I get it. You want to get all the proposals in before you determine what your budget's exactly going to be. Well, just so we can make sure that we're crafting the scope to fit inside a range that you're hoping for, what have you spent on projects like this in the past? Well, we really haven't done any projects like this in the past, so we're not really sure. That's fine. We're probably going to be a great fit for you on this project because we've done a ton of projects like this in the past. And some of the past projects, I think like the last 3 that we've bid that are very similar to the scope that you're doing here, came in around $3,000 to $4,000. Does that sound like a price range that you'd be comfortable with? Still, we're not really sure. It's just going to be dependent upon where the other bids come in. Okay, that makes sense. Getting bids is always a good idea. You want to compare apples to apples across a bunch of different agencies, so that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about whether you want to come in with a high-end product right out of the gate, or if you want to come in with a more entry-level product out of the gate. If you were going to compare your project to a car, would you be looking for a Ferrari or a Kia Optima? Now, a Ferrari and a Kia Optima are going to both get you from point A to point B, but obviously the Ferrari is going to have all kinds of bells and whistles that the Kia Optima doesn't have. So which would you be in kind of the spectrum of cars? Are you looking for something high-end right at the start or entry-level? And we can always do phases after this initial launch to add features and enhance the product. I guess we want a few high-end features now, but we probably are going to add phases to the project in the future, so we definitely want to have that ability. So I'd probably say we're not really a Ferrari and we're not really a Kia Optima. Maybe we're more like a Toyota Camry or something like that. Perfect, that makes a lot of sense. Before we give you a full proposal, why don't we go back to our office, we'll talk it over with our team and get some numbers from all of our developers and designers on what it's going to take to execute on this project, and then we'll send you a rough estimate. That rough estimate's just going to be a 1-page that has a brief description of the project and then a price range that we think that it would cost for us to produce the work. And then if you're comfortable with the price range, we'll go back and we'll craft the full proposal that become our contract for the work. Does that sound okay for you? Yeah, that sounds great. We'll look forward to getting the rough estimate and we'll go from there. Awesome, well thank you. We should have that rough estimate to you by the end of business tomorrow, and we'll look forward to talking it over with you, and hopefully we can work together on this project. Thank you. Okay, there you have it. 5 techniques that you can use to extract the client's budget. You should not be bidding on a project if you haven't made every effort you can to try and get the client's budget number. Each of the techniques that I shared in this video are found in my book, The Psychology of Graphic Design Pricing. I put a link in the description if you're interested. Check it out. Hit the subscribe button. My name's Michael Janda. I share systems and strategies to help creative freelancers and agencies make more money and run their businesses more successfully. If you have any questions, comment below, and we'll see you in the next video.